the part of the story that no one really asks about. My conversion was, genuinely miraculous. I was succeeding in every metric that I thought was supposed to make me happy. And I was so depressed. I was having dreams.
Can you say what kind of dreams?
First time I have seriously come to God, I just immediately started weeping. I see her, she's there, and she reaches out and she touches me on the shoulder.
If God is love, then you can't possibly receive love that's outside of him.
The armor of atheism is all over. Literally can't fathom not being sinful. Jesus is real, and I gotta do something about it.
I would hope that Jesus would have been pretty funny.
I have this crazy hunch that Jesus was hilarious.
This week, I'm joined by comedian Shayne Smith, known for his viral stand-up comedy routines and his iconic face tattoos. We talk about his path to comedy and the incredible spiritual experience that led to his conversion to Catholicism. You won't want to miss this. Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the show. Father David Michael Moses. We have a very special guest on today. Shayne, thank you so much for being willing to talk.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Long time coming.
Yeah. I've been a fan of your stuff for a long time. I remember during COVID, I was watching a bunch of your videos on, I think it was Dry Bar, and they were talking, I think one was a joke about Azkaban, I think. And it had 20, 40 million views or something. It absolutely killed. So it is kind of surreal to be talking to you today. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time. And we can kind of jump right in. I'm sure it's a question you get a lot, but I am really curious about it. I know everybody has a different story. Some of that kind of your conversion. What was your family religious at all growing up? Or what kind of was the impetus for you to kind of get closer to the church?
My mother is somewhat religious growing up. And she went to Protestant church when she was young. And she took me and my brothers to a Baptist church for a summer or two. This family would show up in a van, and they would pack us into the van with all these other people. And then the pastor's teenage son would drive us all to their trailer they converted into a church. And we would do church in there. And God bless them. What a cool family. They're doing what they think is right. They're in the middle of nowhere, and they're doing their thing. But so I had a tiny bit of a religious education, a minor understanding of Jesus. I read the Bible through speed reading, the way an atheist does, which is uncharitably with a closed mind, as fast as you can. It's reading Moby Dick. You're not absorbing it, because it's you're not trying. So my religious education was small. So my conversion was, genuinely miraculous. The fact that I ended up being Catholic too, it's I'm how did that happen? Even to, I know how it happened, but, so yeah, the idea that would be something in my past that resurfaces is no religious education, none at all, basically. So
what was the moment for you where things kind of changed?
Well, there are a couple moments in my story. The first moment is when I was living in New York. I'd moved to New York, and I was pursuing comedy, and I was really depressed. And I've always dealt with clinical depression in a way, but it's never been overwhelming. It's always just been oh man, I feel glum. I feel lethargic and stuff. And sometimes you get depressed, but it's always pretty manageable. I went to New York, and it became completely unmanageable, which was crazy to me because I was succeeding in every metric that I thought was supposed to make me happy. I had a real career, so now I'm supposed to be fulfilled. I have meaning. I had access to people wanted to date me. I had money. I had the New York apartment. I'm in the center of culture. I'm doing comedy. I have famous friends. I go to party. Why would I ever be depressed? And I was so depressed. And so it kind of took a moment to be this is really bad. And I was okay, what am I doing that's different from what I used to do? And what am I doing that's different from the happiest people I know? And all the happiest people I know are my very conservative or very Mormon, and in some cases, funny enough, very Catholic friends I had, or even a few Muslim friends, and I was they're all so happy, comparatively, but they seem tired, but they're happy, and I was okay, so there seems to be a genuine happiness. I would always I explained it like this, like, I would see, I would have famous friends, and they would post on Instagram their awesome life, beautiful dresses and suits and their beautiful parties, drinking, having a good time, like, "What this crazy life, I can't believe you get to live this life," and then on their close friends, they're like, "Started a new round of, antidepressants, and they're having a bad effect on me, I'm so lonely, I can't trust anyone, I'm miserable all the time, I think I need to stop drinking." Like, there's a deep sadness underneath that veneer of Hollywood or whatever. And I noticed that with a lot of people. And then I would see my friends, and he would post like, covered in poop today, don't have 3 kids back to back. But like, underneath the veneer of I'm covered in poop is like, I'm really happy. And like, I wake up every day and I know where I need to be and what I need to do and who depends on me and who I love and what I stand for. No one
Hmm.
polices my speech. Like, I could just see underneath. And so I thought, okay, well, I want what's underneath, not what's on top. And so I started to be more conservative in certain ways, more family first, things like this. And then that led me to discerning religion in general. And then from there, I opened my heart to the idea of God more because I was never like a hardcore atheist. I was always sort of like an 8 of 10 atheist. Like, I actually was doing the sin at the, I can't do the sin of presumption, but from an atheist standpoint, where you're like, I didn't want to presume that I was correct, but I feel like I am, is that sort of thing. And
I
so,
respect that. It's
yeah, and so
humble.
that's where I was at. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an agnostic, but I would never tell someone I was sure of anything. And so it's it is an honest place to come from, but it's also a little bit of a cop out because you can look at evidence and you can make a bigger effort to change that opinion. But anyway,
It's non-committal.
yeah, I went from that to, you know, kind of thinking, being open to it, being like, you know what? If I was wrong about all this other stuff and my life is getting better when I put my family first, when I put my job second, when I start, when I stop, being lustful and gluttonous and all these other things, when all of that changes and it makes my life better, like maybe God is something that could change for me too. But that was just sort of, I'm open to it. And then I had these really incredible experiences where my grandfather died and I moved from New York to be with my family. And well, he was dying and I moved from New York to Utah. Sort of was like, career doesn't matter as much as family. I'm doing this new thing. And I moved to be close to him. He passed away. And soon after he passed away, I was actually handling it incredibly well. No depression, no grief. He was a great man and he died like as bravely and as well as a man can die, no fear, wanted to die, believed in God, so anyway, he passed away and I was fine. And then I started to have this like yearning to go to church that was like insane, and I was having dreams. And then I ended up one day, to
Like,
make a long
can you say
story,
what kind of dreams?
so they were dreams where I would be like in cathedrals. I would always be in churches that had altars, and these were very specific parts of my dreams. Because again, I had a Protestant education growing up. I had a Mormon or LDS and a Baptist education, and everything I kind of knew about church was that. So all the idea of an altar didn't occur to me. I didn't even know that it was like a function of a Catholic mass or of a Catholic church. And so, but very specifically, I would always be at like stained glass windows, stone, altars. I was always in a church. And that was so, I began to understand I'm in a Catholic church in these dreams. This isn't a regular church. Like, I can't. So I had this itch, this insane itch, this like mind worm to go to church. And I began to obsess about it, which is weird. And I'm having dreams and I'm not a big dreamer. So I'm like, that's weird. So I end up going at some point. I went in the middle of the day thinking it would be closed. because I was used to Protestant churches, which are usually closed unless there's an event. But I didn't realize Catholics are like, nah, dude, we hang out in here actually. And so I showed up thinking I'll open the door at noon, it won't be open, and I'll have like scratched the itch and gotten away with it. So I went and opened it, and it was just like wide. It just went wide open. There's a bunch of people in there, and they were doing adoration, I think. And so it was a Spanish parish. So it was like 12 women or whatever, veiled, whisper Hail Marying at full speed, you know. So they're praying very hard, and it's very intimidating. And I went in and I sat down, and I got on the kneeler, and I began to have like a religious experience immediately. And I became like very emotional, and it was a very like overwhelming experience. And I remember I opened it, I didn't know what to do, so I sat in the pew, and then I put the kneeler down, and I was like, I'll just kneel. These ladies are kneeling. This seems respectful. So I got down to kneel, and I was looking at our Lord on the cross, and he's like behind the altar, this big crucifix. And I remember the first thing I ever said. This is the very first time I'm talking to God in my, like, not my adult life, but like it's the first time I have seriously come to God since I was a teenager. We're talking an incredible amount. The first time I'm very for real coming to God, and my opening words were, "Hey God, hey God, it's me.
I
Remember
love it.
me? Remember me? Anyway, I'm here." It was now anytime I sit down in a pew or I go to pray and I'm freestyling, it's just me and God. I open up with "Hey God," and
I love it.
him and I laugh together. I like to imagine. So that always makes me chuckle. But yeah, I opened up with "Hey God." Hey God, what's going
So
on? It's
good.
me, your boy. Like I'm doing a YouTube. Hey gang.
What's up?
Um,
Like, comment, subscribe.
yeah. So I gave him a "Hey God," and I just immediately like started weeping. Like it, he just like, oh, funny opening, boom, and now I'm like very seriously opening my heart to God and being like, do you love me? What's going on? Like, are you trying to talk to me? Are you real? I have. And then it's this crazy thing where I don't know, I'm sure lots of people have had this experience, reverts, converts. I mean, I think faithful people have had where you are in dialogue with God in a very serious way and your heart is very open, and then you sort of like feel your sins or your like shortcomings and the guilt, not in a negative way, but in a like, I want to give this to you, like this is clearly what I'm supposed to do, this is for you to have because I can't carry this sort of. And it was just this sort of like this moment where I sort of became self-aware. That's how I would describe it, where I went
Hmm.
from like, oh, I'm a sin, like doing all this sin and all this bad stuff and just not being a good person, but thinking I'm a good person because I'm not hurting anyone directly or whatever thing you tell yourself. And then I'm speaking to God, and now I'm like very aware, like, I'm not good. I've done a lot of bad things. I've made so many mistakes. I've been so far away from you. This is crazy. And it sort of was like this, I don't know, it's an incredible moment. And so I'm having this moment, and I look over, and I'm sort of like embarrassed, and I'm crying, and I've got like my hands up, which feels silly and stupid because I'm not a Christian and I don't pray. So like it's just, I just feel like I'm doing what I've seen in a movie, but it's working. And I look over, and they had like a tapestry of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I was sort of like, my understanding of Catholicism is so little that I kind of understood that was Our Lady of Guadalupe, but I thought that was a separate lady from Mary. That's
Gotcha.
how little, that's where my education is at Catholicism, to be clear. I thought the Our Ladies were always different saints. I was like, man, Catholicism is killing it with these women that keep bringing people to the Lord.
You got a monopoly on this. That's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Was there a
Like,
reason you went into a Catholic church? I mean, you said it
I
was like a cathedral. You just assume a Catholic church would have the stained glass and everything that you were seeing
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
dreams?
I had an understanding of my dreams that it was Catholic specifically. That is what I
Wow.
want. I need to be in a cathedral. I need to be in a Catholic church.
That's wild.
Like, and from movies and TV and popular culture, even an uneducated secular person kind of couldn't look into a Catholic church and be like, Catholic. you know?
Yeah.
I could, as an atheist, I could spot the inside of a Catholic church the same way I could spot the inside of a Buddhist temple.
Mhm.
Very particular way it's set up. It's very beautiful in a very specific way, you know?
Absolutely.
And so
So what
yeah,
happened next? You have that prayer time and adoration, immediately are hit with it. What
I'm
did you,
hit.
like, make of
I
that?
to be clear, I don't know that I'm in adoration. I look over at Our Lady of Guadalupe and I look back, and that's when I have this experience, the linchpin of my conversion, where I don't necessarily know how to describe it because it feels like a vision. My senses are engaged, but at the same time, I'm not seeing it. It's really hard to explain. And you know what? I've dedicated a lot of time to try to describe how it felt to see her, but um, I see her in front of me, Our Lady, and she's, sort of wearing a cloak and everything, and I'm seeing her, but I'm not seeing her. I'm seeing her clearly, but I'm still in that place. But she's there, and she reaches out and she touches me on the shoulder, and in that moment, I had this like incredible sort of like letting go. Like it felt like if I just finished a 100-mile hike and I took off the bag and
Wow.
everything was lighter and I could just feel that everything was different now. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it because again, I didn't necessarily understand who she was or what was happening to me. And so I've tried really hard to explain the feeling and explain what it was like to see her. And it was beautiful and um scary, but in a way that was exciting. And I don't necessarily know how to explain how it was to see her, but I've sort of come up with this to describe how it felt to be near her. And when I was really young, I didn't have a lot of rules. I had a very strange, sort of broken family, and because of that, my mom worked nights. She was not around a lot. I had stepfathers who didn't care about me or think about me. And so I didn't have a lot of parenting as a child. And so, which is unfortunate, but it's just how things happen. And so once when I was very young, I remember staying over at someone's house, my friend, and I had really bad insomnia and I wasn't asleep. I was like reading a magazine with a light or whatever. And I could hear the door open and I turned it off and pretend to be asleep. And his mom had come into the room to check on us. Very, very lovingly sort of came over and put the blanket on both of us, made sure we were tucked in, gave us a little love, and I could feel her. My eyes are closed and I'm pretending to be asleep, but I could feel her standing there over us. And I wasn't like thinking I was going to get in trouble. I could feel her like loving us in that moment and sort of her appreciation of how safe we were and she just wanted to take care of us. And I wasn't she wasn't touching me and I wasn't seeing her, but I could feel her love in the room. And it was sort of overwhelming. That is what it's like to see Our Lady times a million. It's like it's like that's the only way I can explain it, and I don't know how much more to get into it, but that's what happened. And so,
Would you say that, like, one of the criticisms of Catholics get is like, just talk straight to Jesus. You don't need to talk to anybody else. Do you think? I mean, just listen to that for me. Do you think there's a sense in which like Jesus knew like he's gonna be able to receive my mother in like a really like in a gentle way, like in her
yeah,
feminine maternity, that this will be like a good gateway for him into the faith? Is that how you read some of that?
one bajillion percent. I see that in my life, I was not forgiving my mother. I had a lot of resentment against her for things that weren't her fault or, like just the way life had gone. And then I had lots of resentment for women over the course of my life. I'd been let down by women quite a bit. I had let women down, and so I had an incredible amount of frustration, of fear, of resentment, and all these other things bound up in my relationships with women. And to have her show up in that way for me, it was almost like I was directly talking to God. Do you love me? Are you there? And I was sort of knew the answer. Even with my small education, I understand that Jesus loves me, that I'm a unique, unrepeatable, individual, and that God specifically knows me. But for Jesus to be like, I see that you have, all these frustrations and problems, that you feel like you don't have a mother, like, would you like to borrow mine? And so
Mm,
it was
so
this
good.
incredible moment where yeah, I needed feminine love. I needed I needed that. And it's funny because it what you said, like, to be able to receive. And it's funny because I have had this Protestant critique brought up to me, even in regards to my own conversion. And to that, I would say, well, I was talking to Jesus directly, and then he said, "Get in there, mom." And he knew exactly what I needed, and it was feminine love, and it was that. And all love is God's love. So when people are
Yeah.
like, go straight to, it's like, what love are you like taking apart from God? God is love.
Mm,
So all love, where no matter where it's coming from, is
yes.
God. So when I have this experience with Our Lady, and she comes to me and says, like, you're being unfair, you're being resentful, you're holding all these things, and then she shows me the feminine love I need, like, that feminine love is also God. Sorry, guys. I did get it straight from Jesus. That's what love is, big dog. Like,
That is so good. I never heard anybody articulate that before. Like nobody would be like with your biological mom would be like,
yeah,
I can't believe you're receiving her love outside of God's love. It's like, no, it's all God's love coming to you through your parents or to your friends. Like
yeah,
if
yeah,
God
yeah.
is love, then you can't possibly receive love that's outside of him,
Right, right.
ultimately as the source.
Yeah, and it's just, yeah, that makes so much sense to me. Again, Father Pine, and I don't know if this is something they say in the Dominican tradition or just in general, but something he says quite a bit that really affected me in the beginning of my conversion was, God implicates us all in the plan of salvation. He
Mm,
wants us to come to him together. He's made glorious in his saints. He loves his saints. And so for us all to come together, that's the plan. And, like, obviously, the saints in heaven, including our Blessed Mother, are part of that. But yeah,
totally. And I love that
it's
you say like, I mean, that hits so deep that like Jesus had a mother. And like frankly, if she's good enough, if she was good enough for him, she's like good enough for us, right? Like it's if he was obedient to Mary, like it's weird for us to be like, I'm not gonna talk to her, But
yeah,
exactly what you said that like if you've had a tough relationship with your mom, like how cool that Jesus is like, yeah, you can borrow mine. Exactly what you said. Like, hey, you can have mine. Like that's so generous of him. Like, why would you reject that kind of gift?
right, right. And then it's so funny too, because through the love of his mother, I realize where I failed my own, where
Mm,
mine has succeeded, and I love her more than ever. And now I'm like, it just brought me to this huge understanding. And then it's also yeah, I don't know. It's like, it just makes so much sense, and it's such a non issue. When people are mad about it, I'm always like, I don't understand how you're mad that I am getting to Jesus. What are we frustrated about, really? I don't
yeah.
but that's a whole another thing. I've always also, this might be a bit spicy and theological. We'll see what you think about this, but I was thinking about this, and here's the thing about a lot of Protestant arguments, and I don't want to make a whole Protestant versus Catholic podcast, but when it comes to Mary and the pushback I get from my Protestant brothers and sisters, and they can be very, intense. I'm always like, their theology is all once saved, always saved. That is a part of why I'm frustrated with Catholic doctrine, right? And of course, so they get frustrated with our idea that you need to maintain salvation, that you need to live a righteous life and aspire to be a saint. You can't just get
Right.
baptized and call it good. And
Hmm.
that just makes perfect sense to me, but they don't like that. But if that is the case for them, why would the matter of doctrine of Mary be a problem? I'm still, by your definition, good to go on heaven. So what are you frustrated with? And I'm like, is this what Pascal's wager was mainly? Like, it does
Yeah.
feel like I want to tell them, like, it's the Pascal's wager thing. What is going on? But anyway, I've asked a few Protestant friends about this, and they're like, "You're right. I don't have an answer. I'll get back to you." And I'm like, "Okay."
Oh
So
no,
it's a strange
exactly.
thing. It's a
Well, and
strange thing.
it's part of the problem with like, yeah, if you think you don't need to still live a righteous life in response to God's love and his opening the gates of heaven, obviously like we never could have achieved heaven on our own. It's because of what Jesus did. But there's a response to that. But if you think it's just a one-time thing, then yeah, why do you need a mother to care for you? Why do you need confession? Why do you need to go receive the Eucharist? Like they kind of have to protect it a little bit with, in some cases, kind of a rejection of these other things that
Yeah,
for us, like, yeah, to me too, it seems so obvious that the Lord would want us to like live in this life of grace that is
yeah,
going to have to be nurtured and cared for with things that He has given us and with the mother, that He's given us. So
yeah.
absolutely, I think that's a great point.
Yeah. And then I think that too, when the doctrine, our doctrine regarding the way we should live our life and what we should aspire to, also grows us in holiness in a way that we have religious traditions. And by that, I mean holy orders. And so like, my friends from the Capuchin brothers to the Dominican priests to like the women at Christ the Bridegroom Monastery, like these these people are so beautiful and so interesting and working so hard in their life of prayer, and they're awesome. And then I can't imagine being a part of a religious tradition that doesn't include them,
Mm.
and so that was a huge part of my conversion, where I was like, someone was like, well, you could be you could come to my church, and I would go, and they would all be lovely, wonderful people, and they're on fire for Jesus, and I think that's great. But I'm like, but do you have any guys in the mountains who only pray? Like, because cool rock concert, but like, do you have insane women who are going to tell me the truth no matter what, even if I don't want to hear it, and who are
Yeah.
praying 24/7 all the time and have dedicated their life to Jesus? Because, man, I feel like you should have those. If because
That's
they keep
funny.
us all like, oh, this is the move. Like, I gotta move up. I'm trying to get up to where you are.
Oh, absolutely. I had a mom, fantastic mom, big family, really, really deep prayer life herself. But she said, like, "Ah, Father, I have a hard time with people who like just pray all the time, like these monks and these nuns who just pray. Like, shouldn't there be kind of more of a balance where they kind of do something?" And I said, well, I think you have to understand, like, most of the world isn't praying at all. Like
Yeah.
most people don't pray at all. So we need some people to balance that a little bit who pray all the time, which still doesn't really get it even, but at least it balances out a little bit. So I think it's a good point to say, like, most of the world's not praying. A lot of people, sadly, in churches aren't really praying. We should have a few people who just pray. And if your church doesn't have that, like, it's probably lopsided.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, prayer is so important. The power of prayer is like something I'm just kind of obsessed with. I'm like, I think prayer is so important and so like, it's just radical. It's like a radical act. And I think that I mean, luckily, God doesn't exist in time. So prayers through all of time can apply to us now.
Mm.
So there's a part of me too that's like, are we not praying enough? And the world is being held together by everyone who was praying 1,000 years ago. And are we running out on those soon? Should we get going? But, you
Have we
know,
kind of reached are we about to expire? All the prayers are about to expire. Yeah.
right, right. That's my favorite thing in prayer, was sort of having this realization that God doesn't exist inside of time. And so it is a valid and makes perfect sense to say, pray for Joan of Arc now, and then God will say, oh, excellent, and apply your prayers in the time. And so I think that's really beautiful, and then that's created a thing in my life where I'm obsessed with history, and as I'm reading history, I'm getting interested in these people's stories and their goings ons and the drama of their lives, and I pray for them, and I'm like, oh, well, this counts. This is like real. I'm doing something for real. And then it also keeps me very contemplative at all times about all people and people in my future too, like praying for your future children, praying for your future husband or wife, praying for, your anyway, prayer extends infinitely out into our world and space and time in such a way that like you can engage with the world and your ancestors and history in a really beautiful, really specific, really deep and contemplative way. And I'm like, more people need to know that. You need to know that you can pray for anyone, anytime, any place, literally anytime.
Yeah. It was like the quote user, like we're all implicated in the work of salvation and like the Lord will let you be as involved as you want to be. Like if
Right.
you and prayer like removes the traditional kind of physical limitations of love that I can actually love all these people. I can love my deceased grandparents by praying for them like in a way that I
Right.
wouldn't be able to otherwise. So there's something kind of deeply beautiful. But I am curious you had that interaction with Mary. Where do you kind of take it from there?
Okay, so this is where it's very stupid because I have this I am compelled to go into a church which is already supernatural and I'm vaguely aware that something supernatural is happening. I pray, I have a deep experience. Okay, now I see a vision of Our Lady. I left the second it ended and I was like, okay, what was that? And I literally remember purposefully sort of being like, no, maybe I'm crazy. And so I kind
So you
of
had doubt like
left.
immediately afterward.
Yeah, and I tried
Yeah.
to like, when you're you've been the armor of atheism is all over me, and they're knocking it off. But I've still got it on me. I still like am clinging to what I know. And so I sort of was like, well, that was wild, and I can't necessarily explain it, but like maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Or maybe I imagined that. Maybe that was a daydream. You're trying to make sense of it. And so from there, I started researching the Catholic Church much more in a deeper way. And I specifically remember being like, I think I want to go to church one more time, yada, yada, yada. I ended up having a conversation with my mother soon, like the day after that happened. And in that conversation, and I don't remember how it got we brought up religion. I think I was trying to sneakily bring up religion just to talk to my mom about it. I want to talk to someone. And we ended up talking about religion and my grandfather dying. And she mentioned that my grandfather was Catholic his whole life. But he's an immigrant from Switzerland. They moved to America. He was a dairy worker. He worked like 7 days a week, for his whole life. World War II, the whole thing. So he had kind of like stopped going to church necessarily, but he's still a man of faith, still believed in God deeply, still was a very, very, very good man. He also died at like 100 and something. So like I don't know. So 100 and something. He was almost 101 when he died. So I find out he's Catholic. I go, that's crazy. Now, granted, at the time, I don't realize that he could intercede on my behalf. I'm not
Mm.
aware that this could be happening, which is now kind of what I think is going on. So this happens, and I think, okay, cool. So then I get into my car and I put on a YouTube video from Father Mike Schmidt, and
Whoa.
he's talking about praying for the dead. And I go, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the church. I'm going to go to the big cathedral in town, the Cathedral of the Madeleine, and I'm going to pray for my grandpa. That's the deal. And we'll see what God's all about. So I go, I sit down. Hey, God, what's up? And then I started praying about my grandpa. And I started being like, is he up there? Are you there with God? And then I started doing the like, if he's not, you should let him in. He's pretty cool, pretty good guy, like that. Like I'm gonna negotiate. He never was mean to me, so take that into consideration when doing heaven. And I'm like trying to I don't know. I'm just praying about the whole thing, and I started to get really emotional, and I start to cry, and it's this deep thing where I'm trying to talk to God about my grandfather and stuff. And then I had this moment where it happened again, where it's sort of like my vision is gone, but I'm seeing the figure of Our Lady and Jesus, and they're there, and I sort of had this feeling like everything's going to be okay, and I'm supposed to be there, and then they were gone, and I remember in that moment being like, okay, this is it. Like, that was enough. I'm done. I'm Christian now, and my whole life is going to be dedicated to this. Like, I'm going full tilt into this. And so I left, and I was like, that wasn't a mistake. That wasn't like some weird vision. This was a very specific experience I had. And my first order of business, and this is very stupid, I went to a jewelry store and I bought a cross, and I said, I want a gold cross. I want a real gold cross. I want it to be expensive because in my mind, I was thinking, all right, I'm leaving church. I literally just had an experience with Jesus and what I think is his mom. I got to do this. And then I was like, I am sinning a lot. And this is, keep in mind, I don't even know. I think I'm sinning from a Protestant perspective. From a Catholic perspective, I'm all over the place, baby. I gotta chill out. And so in my head, I was like, I gotta change my whole life. Like, this is and I'm understanding that I'm about to undertake something that, like, I may fail. That's how deep into sin I am. I'm literally trying to imagine myself not being lustful, and I can't. So
You
I'm
can't
like,
even
okay,
fathom like not being
yeah,
connected to
I
some of these things.
literally can't fathom not being sinful. And so I go into this jewelry store, like a Jared's or something, and I go, give me a gold thing. And he sold me this cross for
Whoa.
like, I don't remember how much it was, but it was expensive. It was like $1,000, right? It's the most expensive thing I've ever bought for myself at the time. And so, especially jewelry. It was crazy that I did that. And so since then, I've bought a car and whatever. But I bought this thinking this is my insurance policy. I have invested in this. Anytime I do something wrong, I'm going to be wearing this and I'm going to remember. So it was
Hmm.
like my weird, like, secular brain was like, you spent $1,000 on this cross. Act like it, like protect the investment, protect the investment. And so, of
Interesting.
course,
I like
later I
that.
added a medallion, and now this thing is like, I can't imagine. I'll pass it on to my children one day, but like, I never take it off. And it's funny, at the time, my reasoning was stupid, and I was kind of like, "You're invested," but now I think that, like, representations of our religion and of our Lord and of our struggle here on earth, like religious iconography and stuff, is so beautiful and so special to me and so important. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
and
find it interesting that you hadn't like read a bunch of stuff or talked to a bunch of people, but you had a very clear awareness of what sin was and that
yeah,
it needed to like go away.
yeah, I could tell that, like, I was vaguely aware of, not just the Ten Commandments, but like the Christian expectations of morality. And I think that deep down, I was a political commentator at that time, and I was doing a lot of like very far leftist sort of things. I think deep down, I saw that the morality of Christianity, of Western civilization, what it was supposed to be, what was expected of people, and that it was very good and necessary. And I was sort of coming to that conclusion over time. So by the time I arrived at, like, oh my gosh, like, Jesus is real and I got to do something about it. I needed like you know, a get up and go, because I knew that I was about to change my lifestyle immensely. And
Wow.
I have, and it has been a struggle. It's a lot.
As it always is. So like as soon as you left with that cross, what happens next? And this is fascinating.
So this is the part of the story that no one really asks about. That's funny. Usually I get to that part and we talk about how beautiful it is, how great Our Lady is, how great our Lord, and how incredible it is that I got to have a miracle happen to me. Miracles are wild. So what happened after that was I went down the rabbit hole. I just started the first thing was I was like, I got to start going to mass. And then I started Googling like how to convert. Then I discovered I had to go to RCIA. So that was the first order of business was I started consuming. I went online. I started reading Trent Horn's books. I started Jimmy Akin Catholic Answers, you know. And of course, as I begin to convert, my phone knows that I'm interested in Jesus. And my phone doesn't quite understand what I want to do about it. So my phone was like, do you want a lot of Protestant stuff? And of course, because I was converting, this is another thing that's really interesting to me about Protestantism and Catholicism was as I was converting, my phone was just showing me anyone talking about Jesus,
Hmm.
Orthodox, Protestant, Catholic, you know. And so as I was looking, a lot of my content that my phone was just showing me online that was Protestant was anti-Catholic, not pro-Jesus. And all the Catholic content I was seeing was celebrating tradition, talking about history, being excited about the faith, showing me Fulton Sheen, showing me like, and then these cool edits, showing me the Bible. And I was like, okay, interesting, taking note of that. And so anyway, I just started consuming an incredible amount of content. I mean, I'm trying to read the Summa, I'm reading books, I'm watching YouTube videos, and I just started doing the thing that all adult converts do. It was being the most annoying guy in my RCIA class by trying to know more than the person teaching it. And so I set down that
Gotta have at
path.
least one. Gotta have at least one.
So yeah, I was that guy. I was that guy where the person leading the class was like, "This is right, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're nailing it," because I've done too much. So
In too
yeah,
deep.
I just fully dove in, head first and went crazy. And that was 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. I basically just dove into the faith head first, and I've been reading and researching, and I've never stopped. I had a lot of people be like, "You're going to burn out," and I have not. That is not to say that I can keep it up. I can keep up like pretending I'm living in seminary when I'm not reading constantly. But I I've enjoyed it, and yeah, that's basically where I am. I've been locked into that spot this whole time.
That's
So
extraordinary. Well, we're thankful
yeah,
that you're in it.
thank you. Like I said, it massages my brain. I just love learning about the faith. And here's the thing. At every step of the way, the more I learn, the more edified I become, the more my faith grows. Whereas sometimes in my life it had been the opposite. Like I was a leftist commentator. I was on a very popular political show where I would argue in favor of leftist ideas or policies. And I don't think all leftist ideas or policies are bad. That would be an insane thing to say. Catholic social teaching has a lot of quote unquote leftism in it. I think Catholic social teaching is beautiful and so interesting because it intertwines so many things that seem like they're from opposing political ideologies, and that's really cool and awesome. But in arguing for leftism, I would often have to deep dive subjects. And sometimes deep diving those subjects would shake my faith in what I was arguing for, or create a situation where I was having to bend over backwards and do more research to justify X, Y, and Z. No, 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 you don't understand this because this. I promise, and in researching Catholicism, for instance, I had severe issues with birth control, doctrine of birth control for married
Mm.
couples. I just thought, why are we doing this? And then I thought to myself, well, okay, Jesus is real. He told you to be Catholic. He knows what's in the catechism. Trust Jesus. It'll reveal itself to you in time, right? And so I'm
That's a
approaching it the
great
way like a
approach,
little
man. It's
kid
hard,
who's
but it's
like,
good.
yeah, a little kid's like, long division isn't real, it's fake. This is never going to make sense. And then you have to trust that your teacher is going to be able to show you that that formula is going to give you the answer. So I'm kind of trusting the church, even though I think that the doctrine of birth control is stupid, personally. As I come into understanding and do more research, now I'm like, this doctrine makes so much sense that like the consequences of us not doing it are immense.
Ooh.
We've hurt women, we've hurt the health of society. We, and I'm coming into understanding, and at every point in Catholicism, the more I understand, even when I thought I disliked, the more edified I'm like, oh yes, and so that is so addictive and fun. I can't
Yeah.
stop learning.
Well, in
Whereas,
fact, oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, it just and again before, like I would learn more. I would try to like defend an idea or whatever, and I would kind of see the wrinkles or the cracks, and that would shake my faith. I never have that. I love that. So
That's great. Well, what happens is like what I see with people is like the stuff that they had the hardest time with. When if they study it, they get into it. It's like the stuff they become most passionate about. They're like, actually,
yes,
contraception's a huge thing, and the church gets it, and here's why. Like once you actually dig deep, it is kind of exciting to work through this puzzle.
yeah, yeah, it's
There's a quote
incredible.
from Saint Francis de Sales, and he says the devil doesn't fear your penitence; what he fears is your obedience. And
Yes,
like the obedience to the authority of the church, I know it's hard for people. It's so powerful because
yeah,
once you're locked in and like the church and the faith is locked in, like on the truth, then like it's unstoppable, because there's so much depth to it.
truly, truly. I read when I was struggling with that doctrine, I read something by Saint Pope John Paul II. And I remember he gives this little encyclical or a talk, or I don't know, maybe he wrote it. Anyway, I watched it in a video, but he's basically talking about how birth control, medical birth control, like oral birth control, is going to affect women's bodies. It's going to affect the health of society, and it's
Yep.
going to create a eugenics situation. And he basically said a lot of non-religious arguments for why birth control is kind of scary. And at the time, people sort of were like, "You're being ridiculous. You're being overzealous." They all came true. So
Absolutely.
I'm just
He was a
like
prophet.
blown away. I'm blown away that happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're nailing it. He nailed it. And so I don't know. It's just so interesting
No,
to
and that's
go
such
into
an
that.
argument for the Catholic faith because yeah, when that came out, everybody was like, "Dude, you're like you're missing the boat. You're so archaic. Like, get with it." And like, I would challenge a lot of people, just Christians in general, people in general, to look back and ask if like birth control has been a net positive for society. Everything you said for women, for reproduction, for health, for all these things, all it's done is bring about evil.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
these loopholes that people look for just ultimately they might look good from the outside on a very like shallow level, but when you actually get into it, it's like, gosh, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
it's every argument for it. Like you need birth control or you'll have abortions. It's like, but we have more than ever. We have more than
exactly.
ever of both. So what is it's
Exactly.
almost like it's evil. It's almost like it's a net negative no matter what we do.
Exactly. And so it makes you think like, okay, well, these other things in the church, maybe, people struggle with. It's like, based on the history, I think I'm gonna go with whatever the church says on this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
eventually the science will prove the church right, even if we're not quite there. So, real quick, I want to let you guys know about our concerts for life. Each summer, I get together with an all priest band. I write all the music, and we do a series of shows to support women in crisis pregnancies. It's a packed show, start to finish. It is a blast. I really think you'll enjoy it. You can check the link below for tickets, and hopefully, we'll see you this summer. How did you kind of get into comedy?
Oh man, comedy. How did I get into comedy? So I got into comedy late in life. I didn't start comedy till I was like 28.
Really?
So yeah, yeah. So I spent most of my life doing other stuff, uh crime, and just being a loser and just being like a burnout or whatever. But then I got my life together for a little while and I had some real jobs. Of course, I'm like a tattoo degenerate. So I worked in a factory and did temp work and whatever, worked as a bouncer and these things. And while I was doing that, I had sort of gotten my life together and I was like, man, I should do something more with myself. And so I was like, I could go to school, and I was like, oh, that's right, I didn't graduate any school at all, so I have no idea. I've like 4 years of formal schooling in my entire life. So I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I was like, well, I can't join the military again. And so I didn't really know, like, I wanted to do something, you know? And so I was like, I should try to do more stuff. And I thought comedy looks good. Maybe I'll try comedy. And I didn't really necessarily think of it as a career, but like as something to do. And so I was like, this will be cool and interesting. And I really love to write and I love jokes. So I went to an open mic and it went well. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put all my eggs in this basket. I'm going to go for it. I think I could do good at this. Something about it. I just felt like I was going to do it. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
just
So
saw
sorry, it makes
that,
you
like,
understand. Did people like were people telling you growing up like, dude, you're so funny, like you should definitely be a comedian, or were you just like looking at career options and you were like, I'll try this one?
no, I grew up in Utah, which firstly, Utah is full of the funniest people. Everyone is so funny. Like, I don't know. But I also grew up in a really small town where like people are just themselves. Everyone's so confident where I'm from. I'm from like central Utah, and people in Utah are just like different and weird. Utah's kind of like New York and Florida where it's like its own place. It's its own country within the country, kind of like parts of
Yes,
Texas, even though Texas has
totally.
had a mass migration now, so you guys are a little wonky. You've got a couple of
A
your
little
cities have
watered
been
down.
California, but Utah actually, unfortunately, Salt Lake has had a lot of that. But we only have one city, so it's not a problem. When you only have one town, it's kind of easy to stay normal. But everyone's so funny and so confident and so weird in Utah that I never got like encouragement to be funny, or people were never like, "You're the funniest guy," because there's like nine of us, and we're like. But to that credit, like iron sharpens iron, right? So as another man makes another better. I can't remember the quote because I'm really bad at the Bible, but
But you
oh
think you're
man,
maybe
now
funnier than the general population, but you had
right,
a lot of
but
guys.
but
Yeah.
all these funny dudes around me, like we all elevate each other, and so I grew up in this crazy situation where I wasn't really encouraged, but I knew that I was funny, and so I was like, oh, I could do that, and I'd been on stage because I'd played lots of music, and so I had a bit of stage fright, but I was like, I could do this, and so I went to open mic and I wrote a little story, and the story I wrote ended up in my first special. So my very first open mic set is in a special, which is
Wow.
crazy. Most
That is
people don't
crazy.
write a good joke their first time out. To be fair, I wrote many, 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 many bad jokes after. So I definitely did the normal amount of bad writing. But anyway, so I tried it and I just liked it. And I thought, well, okay, I work a 9 to 5. And my life didn't have a broader meaning. Very, very, very secular, very like very typical like guy in his late 20s story where the early part of your 20s is so exciting, and like you're dating and you're going on adventures and you're invincible and you're skating and you're playing video games and I'm gonna live forever. And then you get like 27 and up and you're like, what is the meaning of life? Why
Yeah.
am I unhappy even though I have everything I want? That kind of thing. And so I was trying to find the meaning of life, and I was like, it must be having a career. That's where meaning comes from. So that was sort
Mm.
of my thing with comedy, which hilariously enough, comedy gives me no meaning whatsoever. I think it's more rewarding to like laugh with friends at Denny's than it is to do comedy on stage, personally. You know what I mean? And
Was there a
so
moment when you were like, yeah, I can do this? Like this is like I'm good at this?
that first night, I got
Really?
off stage and I was like, "Oh, I could do this. I could do this."
Wow.
So yeah, comedy was something that just like worked out for me from the get-go. I just thought, I see the parts of this and I understand how to get better. And that's really satisfying to me. I love to like grow in any way. I was just posting yesterday that one of my favorite things to do is read rule books to board games. I have
That
a
is
giant
unique.
board game collection, and a lot of my games are so complicated, like I'll never play them because another person would have to put 10 hours into learning that game. And then we would have to find a whole day to play it, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so I play a lot of these games alone. I'll set them up and I'll play both sides just to see what would happen and to experience it. And anyway, but I like to read these rule books because as I come into understanding it's like really fulfilling for me. I love that, which is actually funny enough one of my favorite parts of being Catholic. Is there's like a million things I can read or understand or learn in order to come into a greater understanding. So I'm constantly feeling like I'm growing.
Yeah, there's like an insane depth to it.
Oh, it's just absolutely wild. I mean, you could take someone who's illiterate and only have them live a life of contemplative prayer, and there would be an infinite well of growth
Mm.
day to day where they would have peaks and valleys and frustrations, and their spiritual life would still be like wildly interesting and fulfilling and have like this map of growth that would continue up until the day they died. So
Oh,
then you add
absolutely.
in, scripture, then you add in the saints, then you add in history, then you throw Aquinas on top of it, and it's like I'm never going to be done.
Yeah. No,
I
I think
love
when
that.
people hear like mystery with Catholicism, they think like, oh, mystery, like, okay, you're never going to get it, move on to the next thing. But it's the opposite. It's like, it's a mystery, which means you can discover it forever and you'll
Yes.
never get to the bottom of it. It's not that there's nothing to be understood, there's too much to be understood, which
Yeah.
means you could spend your entire life just coming to understand. And frankly, that's what eternity is, right? Like, eternity is this continual discovery of the freshness of who God is, but God's infinite, so you can do it forever. And so, yeah,
Right.
it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, in imperfect being, chasing the understanding of perfection would be infinite.
Yes. Oh, I
Yeah,
like the way that's said. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I love that. That's so interesting to me and something that, like, I really, really, really enjoy about the faith and just, like, rubs my brain the right way. But then you think about it and, like, everyone gets that from growth. And like
Mm.
growth is always positive. I don't know. It's like it's one of those like weird moments when you're like as a convert when I was converting and I was like, oh, like art, music, and fiction raise your heart to God, And then you realize that the Bible is written in many different ways. There's different types of stories and songs and all these things because God knows how to enter into our hearts and lift us up. And you're like, oh, that's what I'm feeling. Oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's very interesting. So I
Oh,
love all.
absolutely. It's all beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, kind of speaking about growth, one of the things I wanted to ask you about with the comedy, I heard a psychologist say the other day that they believe a lot of comedians, they use their comedy as a way of like processing experience in their life that have almost like been traumatic. Would you say, if
Yes.
you feel comfortable, would you say that's been true in your case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Definitely. I think that trauma and comedy are like bedfellows for sure. But at the same time, I think that there are lots of exceptions, but they prove the rule. So I think there is a lot of trauma involved in comedy, especially with comedians. Like, man, every comedian I know is pretty messed up, in one way or another. Some in a lot of funny, like lighthearted, we can make light of it ways, but also a lot of us have experienced some pretty serious stuff. And so I think that there's, any funny person is probably going to have a lot of trauma, but I think also that I think most people have experienced a lot of trauma. I think where the funniness comes in is when you can be sort of self aware of it, and then at that point, that's when I find that the funniest people are almost always very self-aware or the least self-aware. There's not a lot of funny in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, the trauma is there for sure, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a rule. Or I wouldn't say it's a constant because I know lots of really funny people who have had very privileged, beautiful lives, which I'm thankful for them. Like, I love that for them. That's the default. That's what we should be doing. But I do think that there also is this weird thing in comedy where people have found, like, yeah, trauma is a lot of funny people have been through traumatic things and are handling it. And then they kind of do this weird sort of, so you can't be funny unless you've been through something deal, and I don't like that. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think
Everyone's
that's
allowed to be
fair.
funny at all times.
Yeah, I would like hope that Jesus would have been pretty funny, but not
I
because he had like a bad childhood or something.
Yeah, I have this crazy hunch that Jesus was hilarious.
I
Like,
agree.
like, just world-stoppingly funny, like, he had to have been a great time, and then I think the funniest people are always juxtapositioned against the reality of their life, so, like, you can be I think if someone is too silly all the time, it, like, eats away at the currency of funny that they have. That's me personally. I know lots of people who just like people who are never serious. But when someone can be very funny and then also very clearly take life seriously enough to say like this is important or be contemplative about something or like serious or somber or whatever, it makes it when they're funny funnier. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Have there
yeah.
been times when you're reading scripture where you're like, I think Jesus was like that would have gotten a laugh there? Have you ever like thought that in scripture before?
A little bit. I think that there's a lot of times like he's like, "Bring me those fish," and they're like, "Here we go." Like he had to be like, "Ah, come on, I'm gonna do it," and they're like, "You're never gonna believe this."
That's funny. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it's kind of the setup. The setup's
He
coming.
also
They've kind
had,
of been with
I
them long
think he
enough.
had like a kind of dry sense of humor. Like, is he making jokes? Is he sort of like walking on water during the storm when the fishermen are all losing their minds? And he's like, "What are we all? I don't understand what you guys are freaking out about." Oh,
I
can
don't
you
see the
not also
problem.
walk on water? Crazy. I must be like God or something.
Something like that. Yeah, there are probably times he was had to have been kind of amused by the way they were responding to stuff, I would guess.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
I think that he would have laughed a lot. I think he also lived a life of like sacrifice and hardship, but we hear those things as especially as a secular person, you hear someone living a life of hardship and you think, "Oh, that's a tragedy." But then as a Catholic, you hear about someone living a life of hardship and you think, "Oh, it's beautiful." Because and it's the attitude in which we bear our burdens is the difference. When you're secular, you kind of just imagine like, "Woe, it's me. What's the point of this? This is unfortunate." As a Catholic, you're like, "Who even cares? This is where my mortal coil. Oh no!" So then it's like it kind of becomes like the Royal Marines motto, which is a humor in the face of adversity. It's like the number one thing on their motto, I think. But
Really?
and then that's a thing in like all great military traditions very specifically point out that humor is a part of their tradition. So I think Catholics we're big on that because suffering and humor they go together and then they create a fulfilling experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I've been kind of shocked by this. Like even when I preach, after I got ordained, when I started preaching homilies, I could, especially if I have like a really tough message about like everyone needs to go to confession or suffering or something like that.
yeah,
Like if I just go straight into it, people are like, "Oh, okay," like, and it can be really good. Like, okay, you get some people who kind of engage. If I tell like a really banger joke before and everybody laughs, and then you come in with the hard thing, dude, like you can see on their faces, like people are so much more receptive. Like they open their hearts. Has that been
yes.
your experience
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, that's the number one rule of comedy. And I'm a storyteller, so this is incredibly important for me as a comedian is that people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel.
Hmm.
And so if what you say can be remembered, then they will associate the feeling with the broad strokes of what you said. And so people will remember the bullet points of the story and then they'll remember not the jokes, not the tags, not the punches and the little quips here and there. They'll just remember that it made them laugh and feel good. And so you tell your homily and you have the message and you kill it with the joke. Well, they remember big feelings and then they remember, oh, that's right. I got to go to confession, you know?
So you say they kind of positively associate the two.
Yeah. Because listen, in comedy, we have this crazy phenomenon where, there's so many people don't make it. And there's so many deeply hilarious people. The funniest comics on earth aren't famous. They're guys who are just like regulars at the comedy store and stuff. And they kill it, but they can't get famous because even though they're so funny, like people people just think like, oh, you made me laugh. And they don't remember anything but like that guy was funny, but so is everyone else. They're not remembering how they felt. You didn't make them feel. It has to be like an experience, and so which is like kind of unfortunate because as a comic you want to be like, but if I write the best jokes I should be the one. And you're like, no, 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 no. Audiences they don't necessarily just want to laugh emptily. They want to remember. They want to feel after the fact.
I haven't heard that before. That makes sense though, that they don't just wanna go through the motion of laughter. They want, like, a connection in some way.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because that's why like you people love to watch funny things alone. How often do you laugh out loud by yourself? But you can still finish an episode of The Office and be like, dude, this is so good. This is so funny. But like, are you in stitches? No. But you still understand that it's making you feel good because it's funny. That feeling is more important than laughing.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I thought about that. Like, I'll watch a comedy special by myself and I'll never laugh out loud, but I'll think it
Exactly.
was funny. But I'm not really thinking about the funniness. I'm thinking about like a deeper emotion I was connecting with.
Right, right. Because humor isn't the act of laughing. Laughing is like yawning. It's like just because you don't yawn because you're tired, you yawn because you're being social. But yawning and tiredness are necessarily intertwined. Laughter and feeling good from humor are necessarily intertwined, but they are not mutually exclusive. You can have one without the other. You
Do
can
you know the
laugh when
reason
you're
why
scared.
people laugh? Like, they don't laugh by themselves as much? Like,
I
people,
just think it's
what?
a social thing. It's
It's
like
just social.
it's almost like weird, like a connection. Like it's I don't know how to explain it. It's like giving someone a hug with your soul. It's like we're both here together and we're acknowledging that this is funny and silly. It is a great feeling. I love it. I adore it. Like laughing with your friends, you know? And then that's why like laughter can beget laughter,
Yeah, because it's
for the
more
sake of
social.
laughter. There's no point. I don't even know why I'm laughing, man. You're just getting me right now. And
Yeah.
so, um, yeah,
Real quick, just an invitation to sign up for my newsletter. We have newsletters that go out every week with lots of different interesting topics that I think you'll enjoy. You can find the link below. I don't think I've really thought about laughter being like a social event. But I've heard, have you heard this before? That like if you tell someone a story, like a crowd, if you tell them a story, that the heartbeats of the people like in the crowd will start to sync up together with the storyteller. Have you heard this?
I've never heard that.
Dude, I heard that the other day. Like, you actually, a lot of the people's heartbeats will start to sync up. I mean, I should look at like whatever study that was, but it came from, I think, a pretty reputable source, which blew my mind that like you're
So,
getting people quite literally like on the same page with your story.
yeah, I love it, man. I do feel like when everyone's in sync, you know, it feels so like there is a weird feeling in a room that is so special that you can only get from that. It's kind of like I hate horror movies. I think they're silly. I don't understand why people like them so much. But
I
I will
agree.
say that one of my favorite movie going experiences of my life is seeing Signs in the theater. Being scared with everybody was a lot of fun. But like, would I watch a horror movie alone at my house? No. Why did I like it with everyone else? It's interesting. We're
Yeah,
all together experiencing a story. Like, it changes the dynamic.
absolutely. Yeah, when
That's
there's like
why I
that
think it's so
social.
special to read the gospel in mass as opposed to just like Bible study by yourself or with like one other person silently and then you're kind of discussing it. But to like experience the gospel as a group, that's kind of like a little special. Like we had the Palm Sunday reading where we do Jesus is being betrayed and Judas gives him the kiss, and but when the the congregation, we're all doing it together, the priest is reading his part and we're saying our part and we're all like participating in that, man, that was really getting me. I was like, oh, I'm like in this, I'm feeling this right now, and it really set the scene, and it was special.
Absolutely. I was at a family's house dinner the other night, and they had kind of had a reversion, the parents, and like the mom and the dad had been like they separately read like the same scripture one day randomly and had like this crazy emotional breakdown. At the end of the day, they came back and like somehow they'd been reading the same scripture at the same time. Like just totally God's grace came in their lives. It's crazy. But
Yeah.
they had this moment, like they prayed with scripture every day and it was like getting crazy. And the dad goes, "Gosh, we need to hear this live." And what he meant was like, we need to go back to mass. Like we need to hear
Yeah.
this live. And I've never heard it that way, but I loved that. Like we need to see this live, like a band. Like you would hear a band, and you're like, I want to see these people live. And for them, the mass was exactly what you're saying. Like, let's hear the story of Jesus live. And
Yeah.
I just loved that.
It is very cool. Yeah, I love that. That's funny. We got to see this
We
live.
got to see this live. And like it is cool that the Catholic Church, like people say we don't read scripture. It's crazy.
It's
It's like
so
there's
funny.
so much scripture in every single mass.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Palm Sunday, you're getting like half the Bible. And it's some long readings. With humor, this is kind of a personal question. What do you attribute the fact, because you've done this way more times than I have, sometimes you'll tell a story or a joke in like a crowd and it'll like kill like so good, and you tell a joke and a story in like a very similar crowd and a similar demographic age group and it doesn't do as well. Do you like, I guess it's a personal question, like spiritually, are you like, oh, the Lord's keeping me humble, or maybe this that never happened to you, but or are you like, no, like just the individual composite of these people was a different dynamic, or like, oh, just the acoustics in the room and the setup and the seating, it must have been something different. How do you like interpret those moments if you have them?
You, as a comedian, you bomb so much and you put so many reps in and you do so much comedy that if you're like, if you have a discerning mind, you really can like get into the weeds with this. So I think that it's kind of like do you know anything about the game of Go?
I don't think so, no.
So
But you
you know
probably
what
know everything because you love reading rules, right?
I don't know a lot about Go. Go is the hardest game of all time. So, with chess a very close second, I think. But here's the difference between chess and Go. Go is a big board, and you put on these little stones, and you try to capture each other's stones by creating these patterns over time. And the strategies are insane. So, the strategies are so crazy that they have a hard time making an AI that can consistently beat a human. Like, it's crazy.
Wow.
So, in any case, um, chess is very interesting because it's very mathematical. Anytime someone makes a move at the highest level, they usually have an idea of the 5 things they want to happen and the 10 things they expect to happen, right? And so they make these moves and they're all very calculated. In Go, you ask a high level Go player, why did you make that move? And he goes, I don't know yet. He's operating at such a high level that he understands the game and he understands where he's going and what he's doing, but he's not quite sure why he made that particular change or move, right? And I think that we can all sort of relate to that. You're playing Call of Duty or whatever, and you're like, why did I know to turn right there? Why did I turn? And you're like, but I felt like now's the time to check. And in comedy, sorry, I'm taking a long time to get to
No, it's fascinating.
this thing, but so I have over time, I'll look at a room and I'll go, this part of this joke is going to be harder. And I'll just instinctively know. And sometimes I'll be able to tell because I'm like, well, this crowd just doesn't, they're not talking as much, they don't feel as fun, or the energy in the room is low, or they seem more drunk than normal, or it's just a Friday night and it just doesn't seem right. And I can never quite put my finger on, like, I can't tell you why. I can just tell you that I know it's going to happen. And so because I've performed so much now, I every weekend that I perform, I usually perform 5 shows. 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, or 1 Thursday, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday. And I can almost always tell before I go on stage, I'm gonna work harder than normal. I'm going to get less laughs on this thing. I'm not gonna do this because I just don't even want to risk it. And I couldn't tell you how I know. I can only tell you that I know and give you clues as to why I know. But a lot of it is just like you said, the lighting in the room, a different time, a different place, a different energy with everybody. It's really fleeting. There is a science there, but like I can't quite get my hands on it. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know something is going on.
And how do you respond then if you're like, "Oh gosh, this is gonna be a tough crowd?" Do you change some things or you lean into it more or you just roll with it?
Yes to all three. Sometimes you change something because you're like, you know what? It's not even worth going into this because I think the payoff is going to be low. Sometimes you go, you know what? I'm going to plow through this like a tank. I'm just going to put my head down and go through this. And you know what? To go back to the feeling and not laughing thing, a very funny phenomena is I will get off stage after a set that I liked. And Father, I have liked maybe less than 10 of my sets in my whole career. I've gotten off stage and been like, "Let's go!" Like ever. 10 out of the thousands of times I've performed.
Wow.
And so when I get off stage, I'm like, "Yes, that was awesome." People will be like, "Thank you for the show. It was so good." I have on very many occasions gotten off stage and been like, "That show's terrible. I shouldn't even do the meet and greet. I hate everything. I worked so hard just now. You guys barely like me." And then multiple people, "It's the greatest show of my life. That was the greatest show of my Thank you so much. That was the best show I've ever seen in my life." Multiple messages on Instagram afterwards or whatever. I drove 6 hours to see you, was so worth it. You blew my mind. And I'm like, what? That you liked that? And they're like, it was so funny. Why? Where were you? Why were you laughing? It felt dead in there. But
Totally. Yeah, I relate with that so much when it comes to homilies. It is hard. It's just hard to know. We had
we're
a,
also our own worst critics.
yeah, for sure.
I'll say like, I didn't do well, and then multiple people who I'm close to that would love to tell me I did bad. They'll be like, you were fine.
Yeah.
So who knows?
I had a homily the other day, and I had this middle section that I thought was really hilarious. And at the 7 a.m. mass, it like totally bombed. It just like did like barely like just a couple of chuckles, and I was like, dang, I thought this was funny. I thought this was super funny. And I was
Yeah.
like, is it just the 7 a.m. mass? Was I too early? What was? And I almost scrapped it for the 11 a.m., which is way more crowded. And I asked someone, they're like, no, that was pretty funny. You should keep it in. And then it completely killed at the 11. There's like everyone was dying laughing. And I was like, I'm glad I kept it in. It just depends. Yeah. And I do
It,
think spiritually
I
there's something to that.
I think too that both of us have a one up, because when you do a homily or you tell a story, the important part isn't necessarily that they laugh. And so of course for me, I'm a comedian, I want them to laugh, but again, I understand that, like, you know laughs per minute, yada yada yada. But when I'm telling a story, I can kind of like rest on the fact that, like, I am telling you a story. And so if you're not going to laugh at this part, still just enjoy it. It's a story, just do the story. So I don't have to, like, it's not like a one liner where I'm like, the only point of these words coming out of my mouth is laugh. And if you don't, that's the worst thing that could happen. So I am protected from that in a certain way. And so are you, in certain ways, unless you're like, pause the homily. Do you guys,
You
which
want to hear
I've
a
seen a
joke?
priest do. I've seen a priest be like, "Oh, that makes me remember this thing," and then they'll say a joke. And glory to God, I've never seen a priest bomb doing something like that. But woof,
Yeah. Oh no, you're right. You're kind of going all in.
yeah, I have seen priest bomb, but there's a part of me that's like, it's endearing, where I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, Father, you tell them. You do your thing, and you just keep giving us this message, and then we're gonna we're gonna get the Eucharist in, and so
You do your well, it's funny because I am a little jealous of comedians because you guys, my understanding, like before a special, right? You get to like give the jokes a lot of times in a lot of different places and kind of refine, like, oh, that was a laugh I didn't expect. Lean into that. That one did not work out. And as priests, you pretty much it's just showtime. And if it doesn't go well, then it didn't go well, and that's it. Like you don't have a lot of time to workshop the
no,
material.
no, no. Oh my gosh, the pressure on people. Can you imagine being Father Mike Schmidt? I would
Oh, I
just
know.
He's like recording every homily for so many people to dissect, and he has haters. Oh my gosh, God bless him. I pray for him all the time. But um,
Yeah, it's
I
straight there.
have, yeah, as a priest, you just have to send it. You just have a homily. So I asked my friend Father Gregory Pine, who he's Dominican, awesome guy. He's actually gonna marry me and my fiance. We're and so which is
Congrats.
awesome. But I asked him once. I go, "Do you ever redo homilies?" And he's like, "No, actually, I don't." And he's like, "I've written some of my favorite ones down or whatever, but I don't redo them." And I was like, that's crazy. And then, so we were at dinner with a bunch of Dominicans. And then another one of the fathers was like, I converted from Anglicanism, and Anglican priests have a book of homilies. So if you just have like a bad week, or you want to take the week off of writing, or you're tired or whatever, you just bop into the book of homilies for priests who are bad at homilies, and you can bop in there and you can use them, and it's perfectly fine. And he goes, yeah, they use it all the time. And I was like, man, dude, that's, can you imagine just
Well,
having a
and
book where you could swoop?
well,
Let me
doing
tell
now
you
with
all about.
ChatGPT, you can
Oh,
just
that's
say
right.
like, "Hey, these are the readings. Can you write something that involves Saint Irenaeus and some quotes and blah blah blah?" It's not great, but it would like get the job done. I wouldn't do that, but
Then you're gonna have some weird 14-year-old who's gonna be like, I see that you were plagiarizing, like.
oh, totally. I think it would become noticeable. Do you ever get worried that you'll run out of material? Like run out of stories? Is that ever a fear
Yeah.
that you have?
I worry about it, but not in a serious way. I worry about it in the way that like you just have anxiety and you're like, what if I run out of interesting things to say? And then I'm like, I what? That's not how life works. I'm fine, but
Yeah.
I do worry about it. I don't worry. I don't think it's really going to happen, but it is a worry that inhabits my mind for whatever reason. God take it from me because I don't want it. It's
Yeah.
like, what am I doing? Why would I worry about that?
It's definitely better to live with a spirit of abundance, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Think that there's like a confidence you should have. Like the human experience is so insane. Like, how could I ever run out of things to say? Especially
Yeah.
funny. Everything's so funny,
Mhm.
everything. And so it's just it's like a silly anxiety that I think we all have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. Thank you for your witness, for
Of
what you're doing,
course.
and I know
Thank you
it's a
for having
huge
me. Sorry
impact
if
on a
you
lot of
can
people.
hear my dog fighting my cat
No, dude, it's
now.
just
They're playing X-Men. They're
part of the
playing X-Men.
fun.
This dog is watching.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. No, thank you so much for taking the time today, and like I said, for your witness. And is there anything we can do to support you? Any projects you're working on right now, or anything like that?
I'm working on so many things. I'm about to write a book,
Sick.
possibly about guilt and forgiveness, and
Awesome.
moving on from a past that seems impossible to move on from, which is something we discussed off air and a little bit on. So I'm excited for that. So look out for that, everyone. ShayneSmithComedy.com. You can see my tour dates. Shay Dozer, ShayDozer on Instagram and stuff like in Facebook or whatever. But I'm touring. I'm gonna be in Plano, Texas. I'm gonna be in Dallas, Texas. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
in
just a couple hours north.
Arizona and Wyoming, Colorado, Australia, Canada. Come see me. Come see me do comedy. It's clean comedy, so I'm assuming if you're watching the Father David Michael show, you want me to be a good boy on stage, and I promise I will be, because I'm also Catholic. So we can have a good time and laugh, and it'll be fine. Priests come to my shows all the time. No, everything's cool. So if you want to come see me do some comedy, that'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
it.
awesome that you keep it so clean. That
Yeah,
families can come and they can enjoy it and really have a good time,
yeah.
but it's
After my
still absolutely
conversion,
hilarious.
it just felt weird to perform in a way that couldn't the most people couldn't enjoy. Like, what am I trying to hide joy from people? That seems
Yeah.
unfair. So I wanted to make something that the most people could enjoy. So
Yeah. Well,
here we
absolutely.
go.
Well, keep up the good work. Very, very appreciate you taking the time today, and we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, yes, please.
Sounds good. God bless you, man. That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Let me know what other things you'd like to see in videos in the comments below, and we'll see you next time. God bless.